about a topic that's been provided to talk about urbanization and urban soil health, which is really a fantastic topic to talk about, right? So I'm going to, take you through certain slides, talk about certain things. Like first, I'm going to talk about what is, the certain key terms, like what is urbanization. We want to understand a little bit about what is specific about these urban soils. I also want to compare, look at what are the main characteristics of urban soils when we are talking about them. I want to take you over how do we compare the natural or the regular agricultural soils with that of, the urban soils. Obviously, you must have already learned about some of the soil health principles that I might really take you a little bit on that and apply those principles to the urban soils as well. And why it is important for all of us to study urban soils. What is the significance of these soils? And obviously, we have a lot of challenges that surround these urban soils. We'll talk about them. And finally, how is it possible for all of us to manage these soils better, right? And at the end, I would like to, look at, what is our takeaway for the class today, and we'll have some fun activity that we can go on doing. All right, so that's my plan for today. So let's begin. To give you certain definitions of, what urbanization is, obviously you all know that, but I just want to, kind of warm it up saying it's basically how people have been moving to these big cities, right? And every time I talk about urbanization, I have the soils component in mind because this is something that has been linked to the urbanization component from a very long time. And also we should be aware that this is one of the most significant thing that has happened in the recent time as more and more people are moving. There is, changes to these soils in the urban lands. All right, so the next term that I want to discuss is urban lands. So the minute I say land, I'm referring to the soils. And how do we define the urban lands is it is anything to do with the, the boundaries or the administrative boundaries that are surrounding these cities, which we are all located, most of us, which everything that includes with the residential, the industrial regions, the commercial, the offices, buildings, roads, highways, think about everything that surrounds these urban lands is what is, defined by the USDA and RCS as urban lands. Now, the third important, concept that is recently talked about is Anthropocene. This is one of the most recent geological period where humans have modified these lands to the so much of an extent that, we have seen a lot of changes that have happened to these urban soils. So this is like a significant, contribution by human activity that has caused I would say a lot of damage to the urban soils, and we need to be aware of this Anthropocene term in terms of the geological period that we are in. All right, so here are some of the facts that we need to be aware of with regard to urbanization and urban soils. So globally, if you look at it, around 2.5 billion people will be living in the urban cities by 2050, according to the UN, data. So what it means is currently we have more than 50% of the people living in the urban lands, but it could go up to 66% of people living in these urban lands in the coming years by 2050. And in the United States, especially if you look at it, already 81% of people live on these urban lands, and that is like a lot of population actually moving to cities, right? And what it means in terms of land is we have more than 1 million acres of land, which is, under expansion, or it's the approximately size of one Rhode Island, you could say, is being added annually to the acreage of urban lands every year. So this is a huge land that is significantly being added to the urban lands. And overall, if you look at it, it's around 6 to 8% increase of the urban land usage you would see in the coming years as we proceed. So this is a huge component of, expansion of the urban lands that we are noticing. So with urbanization, comes a lot of issues associated with it. We all know the more people are, moving from rural to urban regions, there will be a lot of issues with housing, obviously. More people on the roads, that means more transportation and the consumption of energy, right? And there's you're going to see a lot of issues with urban soils being, compacted. We all know about this urban soils contamination levels, and also the urban heat islands, which I haven't provided here, but yes, those are all going to be impacted, or the issues that are associated with urban lands. But we are more concerned about alteration to the urban land in terms of, what is that we are maintaining versus what is that we are losing. So there's going to be a lot of loss to the prime land, which is, in my understanding, when we say prime land, I'm talking about a lot of, the land that could be accommodated for growing crops and, those forest lands. And obviously they are so significant because they provide us the essential ecosystem services, right? And we are going to lose a lot of, sensitive lands like your wetlands and, forest habitats, which have a significant role to provide us the necessary services that are needed for us to survive in the urban areas. So we have these issues that we need to be aware of as urbanization is happening. So I want to bring it to your attention that what's happening is that United States, with regard to the USDA NRCS, which is, you all know, that is the National Resource Conservation Agency, which is basically has an inventory of how these lands are changing, or how the rapid land use has been changing over the years. So it keeps an inventory of the land use. It all started in 1930s with, keeping a record of soil erosion inventory that started. And then over the period of time, we saw that it ended up being a regular activity every 5 years. It keeps a record of the natural resources that are being lost. And it basically enables us to be ourselves updated and also investigate, what are the latest trends in the way we are losing our natural resources. And especially this is referring to the non-federal lands where, a lot of land is being lost. And this is basically also helping us to, obviously have a good program planning, and enables us to have better policies to how we can manage these urban lands, right? And all of this is happening, but there's also a lot of universities like Iowa State University and other state labs which have contributed to collection of data that can help us to keep an update of rapid land use changes that we have been seeing. And this is very good to track what is happening with the urban land so that we can manage them better. So my concern is basically about the loss of, prime farmland, right? So this is something, obviously, we are thinking about those lands which are providing us these services, and that is happening because of lot of urban and suburban residential land that has got into usage in the recent times. So more people moving from rural to urban areas, and I'm sure you would have noticed that, there's so much of construction that's happening, and a lot of peri-urban and suburban areas are, growing in size with regard to the residential regions, right? So because of this chunk of, suburban regions, we are seeing there's a lot of expansion of the urban lands. And you would be surprised to notice that, about 2/3 of the counties in the United States have at least 1,000 acres of, conversion lands that we are seeing in conversion from rural to urban. Well, over the years, as urban sprawl has been happening, not much attention has been paid with, preserving these farmlands, which should be an important aspect of city planning, and that is a big concern, right? So we are not taking those lands into consideration. I want to bring your attention to two important things when, city planning happens. And recently what we have found is there are two ways of, the city planning that's happening. One is obviously the, you would call it the positive side, like compact and condensed planning, which takes into consideration, all the green spaces and gardens, which is what, will provide the resources or the essential services for all. So it takes into consideration all those lands. And also, if you're thinking about, places where people would like to have certain small farms in and around their, housing, it basically on the fringes of those areas that provides, or serves their local food production needs. So these spaces are, incorporated into the planning process. Obviously, when you have these kinds of, lands which can provide you the required supply of, fresh grown agricultural produce, which is a great way of, planning your city. But on the other side, I would think about like the low density development planning, which is happening pretty much in a lot of, peri-urban and suburban areas, where you see the land is being lost because of a lot of construction, roads, and, housing that is coming up. And in that process, we are, losing a lot of these sensitive lands, such as your wetlands and the floodplains and the streams, which are not basically taken into consideration while planning. So obviously the low density development planning is something that, should come down, and there should be more of, compact planning, which enables us to utilize these green spaces and have those essential services that our lands can provide us. So this is the recent information that I got from the data that we got from a paper in 2023, which talks about how the urban land use changes are happening and what is expected by 2040. So I'd like to bring your attention to look at two of these graphs that you see. So you can see on the left, you have how the agricultural land is being converted into UHD is urban and highly developed regions. And on the right side, you see the agricultural land being converted to low density residential lands. So what it means is, on the right side, you would see that there's a lot of agricultural land that is being converted into low density residential lands, right? So which is not obviously preferred one. Because it doesn't take into consideration all of those sensitive lands that we have just spoken. And, you need to think about how can we have more of compact planning that needs to be included when we are thinking about rapid changes. But it is estimated that, we are going to lose a lot of land to LDR, which is low density residential land in the coming years. And you could see in the graph, on the eastern side, you have a lot of these lands upcoming, and I would contribute all of this because of those those urban, semi-urban and peri-urban regions, and a lot of construction activities going around in these regions, and that is what is contributing to this increase in the conversion of agricultural lands to LDR. All right, so having taken a stand on what's happening with the urban lands, now it's time to understand about soil health. I'm pretty sure you all are aware of how soil health is defined. I just want to review a little bit, saying that it is the continued capacity of our soils to function better, right, to provide those kinds of ecosystem services that are needed for plants, animals, and humans to continue their lives. And it is one of the key agricultural and food production system. And you all might also be aware of the key principles of soil health, which is you need to see that you as far as possible, minimize the soil disturbance, right? You need to make sure that you maximize the living roots in your soils. Always keep your soils covered, and we talk about cover crops all the time. And you need to have, a diversity of, crops that you grow, and if possible, include livestock as well when you want to have healthy soils. So the same principles actually apply to the urban soils as well. And we want to see how that contributes, right? Before that, I want to say that soil is a system, and whenever you talk about soil health, we want to make sure we have all of these: the soil physical, chemical, and the biological properties are being taken care. If you address all of these, that is when you will have these healthier soils. In terms of the urban soil health, why it matters to us, obviously we know that urban soils, like any other soils, have a significant role to play with regard to protecting our soils, with providing quality water. They act as sponges for the purpose of infiltration. They reduce the flooding, right, and support for the vegetation. Obviously, overall, if you see in the bigger scenario, they are contributing a lot with increasing the climate resilience, and ultimately it plans us, helps us to plan a city which is more sustainable, and where we all can live better. Okay, having an understanding about urban soil health, I want to talk about what is happening currently with all the anthropogenic activities that we are doing, and I call it as the key soil degradation activities. When we talk about, think about urban soils, there are certain, things that come to our mind. Obviously, we think about the levels of contamination, right? We think about urban heat islands. Then we think about various kinds of, sealing, soil sealing, which is like the key thing that we all are talking in terms of soil degradation of urban soils, right? So let me talk about some of the key degradation activities that are happening on the urban soils. So I would like to define what soil sealing is. I'm pretty sure when you are, located wherever your office or schools or offices are located, you would have seen those pavements and buildings, right? They are all sealed with some kind of either cement or concrete or asphalt material. Obviously, when you try to seal them, it's causing a lot of disturbance to the soil. A lot of functions of the urban soils are restricted, like less infiltration, the gas exchange is reduced, and that obviously impacts the natural soil and atmospheric interaction that needs to happen in a natural process. So this is one of the biggest thing which is happening to the urban soils, is soil sealing. Yes, compaction, obviously, we all know how much of, human activity happens on the urban lands. We all drive our cars as heavy machinery that goes on. Obviously, the more compaction, the increase in the bulk density, right, that reduces the pore space, and obviously the spaces for interaction or the movement of the nutrients and restricted growth of the roots. All of that, contributes to even to the microbial activity, and obviously it impacts the growth of plants and the produce that you get out of it. So compaction is another significant land degradation activity that's happening on the urban soils that we need to be aware of. The third degradation activity I would like to talk is about the soil horizon mixing. It's just that it is the different layers or the profiles or the horizons of the soils are getting mixed with the kind of activities that we are doing, mostly excavation and grading. So when you mix these horizons, obviously you are losing the structure of the soils. That obviously decreases the soil organic carbon and soil fertility, and obviously you are restricting the plant root growth as well with the horizon mixing. Well, not to talk about contamination, various kinds of contaminants you can see in the urban soils, waste coming from industries, housing, obviously the traffic, lot of fertilizers that we apply on the agricultural lands, and heavy metals, obviously, and some of the microplastics and other toxins, which are very harmful for microbial communities on the soils, and obviously that impacts human health as well, right? So that is one of the biggest concern again on the urban soils. This is another concern about the deposition and oxidation of certain dredge material. This is caused with accelerated erosion, or sometimes addition of different layers of asphalt. It's basically you are creating a impermeable layer or a synthetic barrier which disturbs the way the water can penetrate, and all the activities with related to the infiltration and clearing off of the contaminants in the water that is observed in the urban soils. So, as we are talking about, these are all kind of related. Once you do any kind of compaction, obviously the soil will get disturbed. But soil disturbance itself is another, key thing that we have been noticing, which obviously breaks down, soil aggregates. There's going to be, poor structure of the soil. It'll reduce your soil stability, and that is going to increase all kinds of issues with the increased runoff and soil erosion. And that's going to cause a lot of disturbance on your urban soil health as well. So other thing you need to notice in the urban soils is, leaf litter removal, which is very common. So that also disturbs the soil fertility and obviously reduces the organic matter when you are, removing the leaf litter. Another key thing about, losing biodiversity, as we are thinking about various, disturbance activities on the soils, including compaction and contaminants, you could see that, these all will impact the microbial communities and the fauna. And obviously you're going to reduce the decomposition activities and thereby impact the biodiversity of, different kind of microorganisms that can survive and improve your soil health. So you're going to see that kind of decline in the urban soils. All right, so here is a consolidated chart of all the key soil degradation activities that have put together, which talks about the key processes that we just talked about and what are the things that are causing these, right? Like for example, we talked about soil sealing. So some of the material could be like concrete and asphalt are the triggers or the causes of soil sealing, and how these soil sealing, what is the soil property that is being affected by soil sealing. You could see that there's going to be, if issues with the soil porosity and, the pore connectivity sometimes, and infiltration gets impacted by, soil sealing. And how is it that it's going to have an impact or on the ecosystem services, basically the ecological consequences in terms of how we're going to see changes in the soil. So you could see like increased runoff and infiltration issues and low recharge of the aquifer. So you could see that, all of these key processes have those key drivers and what kind of, soil property is impacted. And you could see the consequences of these activities of on the soil health. So we're just moving on with understanding why these urban soils health is so important for us. So because we all know the urban soils are, providing us the key ecosystem services. And what are those ecosystem services if you want to look at them? Obviously, the first thing that comes to our mind is food security, right? So if we grow healthy crops, we're going to get good food, which is again healthier for all of us. So the first thing is about food security is one of the important ecosystem service that these lands provide. Then think about the water regulation, right? So soils basically act as those sponges, or they act as those filters that enables water infiltration, and sometimes they're also responsible for trapping those pollutants inside the water, right? So they can clear up the pollutants from the water that's flowing through. So water regulation is an important service. Carbon storage. So think about urban soils where you have the land that is covered by parks, lawns, or any kind of turf, even turf material. You could see that they are serving a purpose of storing carbon inside, and that happens by the movement of the carbon through the soil, and that is taken up by the plants, and over a period of time, they are responsible for storing the carbon inside the soil for a longer period of time. So carbon storage is one of the important ecosystem service. Now, in a larger scale, if you look at, they are also responsible for climate regulation and, microclimatic improvement. Green spaces have been known to, reduce the mental and physical stress of people, right? They are also known to increase, reduce any kind of heat stress that you could see on the urban lands. Obviously, they're also responsible for the kind of ambience, or you could say improve the aesthetic value of a particular place. So they play a very important role in regulating a microclimate and also overall improvement of the climatic conditions. The last service that I would want to talk about is nutrient cycling. So these soils have a very critical role to improve the microbial activity inside the soil, and obviously more microbes, there's good amount of decomposition and organic matter conversion that's happening, and obviously that is improving the soil health, which is again very crucial when we are talking in terms of urban soil health. So these are a few of the ecosystem services these urban soils provide us, and they matter to us a lot when we are thinking about saving our urban lands. So here I have some of the challenges, not the challenges in terms of the regular ones that we are talking about with the urban soils that we just spoke about, but this is with regard to what kind of challenges are we seeing with regard to planning about these urban soils. So what we found in the recent literature is there is either inadequate or sometimes non-existence of soil survey information, for proper planning that can happen. But you can also say that it's not completely inexistent or non-existence, but you could see that for certain cities and states there is soil survey information available. So cities like New York, LA, Chicago, Detroit, and Seattle, to name a few among those, you could still find some soil survey information that's available for proper planning. While some of the cities, there's still this process of ongoing soil survey information, like Denver, Pittsburgh, Lexington, Milwaukee, and and the Twin Cities. So these are the cities which are still in the process of collecting soil survey information. So that is great news that we are continuing to collect that kind of information so that we can actually plan better for our urban soils, right? But the problem is also, people need a lot of information about their own lands. So there is lack of on-site investigation or certain plans that are needed for them to estimate or better manage these soils. Sometimes there is less information about the assessment of these urban lands. Sometimes think about having a small urban garden and you don't know much about your own garden with regard to the soil health. So you need some assessment or data that can be provided for you to help and you can manage your soils better in the urban lands. So that is something that is still missing, and people are really not aware of these resources, or they do not know how to reach out. So now we know that these are the issues that are existence with, or the challenges that are there. But despite all of this, what is that we constantly continue to do is practice the basic principles that are needed for us to make sure that our urban soils, can produce better crops as well, right? So we are trying to build healthy soils for better crops. So what all we can do, think about these things. First we need to have like a proper site plan, of what is available within your reach. So once what kind of, green spaces or the land that needs to be allocated for green spaces and which needs to go for the construction activity, basically you are, having a better plan to manage them. Now, again, going back to this one, compact urban planning, if you remember, so we want to have more of compact planning rather than the low density residential planning, right? So because this kind of planning basically takes into consideration all of those sensitive lands, which are with the fear of losing, or with the urbanization that we are seeing, that the prime land is being lost. So we can take care of these lands by compact urban planning. Now, this is one of the very, very important thing I would insist that everyone should get it done, is your soil testing. it is very crucial for building healthy communities. And think about it, this is not something, which you cannot do it, because it is available in most of the counties and it is free of cost. And it is unlike anything that you could do is, the simple methods that we all know. You just go and collect some random samples from your farm, or in this case, your urban gardens, and you can give them your samples and they're going to provide, the results within few weeks about your soil health. So then, having knowledge about your soil health basically enables you to plan your gardens better. Some of the research has shown that having raised beds will also help you to prevent urban soil contamination. So go for it. If you can, if you have small land in your backyard, have these raised beds and grow the crops that you can, so you have some healthy crops in your garden. Obviously, it's never enough to say, keep your soils covered, use cover crops. Even in the urban lands, it's still possible for us to do this with whatever land that is available. So go ahead with using cover crops. Soil restoration, that is something, once you can think about what are the practices that you can do to save your soils. Go ahead and manage your soils better with certain restoration practices.